Hello and welcome. I'm Marian Pyle. Thanks for joining us here at Winning at Love. This uplifting video series is designed to honor God and provide guidance and encouragement to Christian singles about dating, romance, and finding the right partner in life. Winning at Love brings you 8 deeply personal and inspiring testimonies told by Christian couples who took a risk, faced their fears, persevered through the setbacks, and won the heart of the one they loved. We trust you'll be blessed. Here now is Winning at Love.
Winning at Love, spirit-filled stories about dating and romance.
Growing up in the small town of Portland, Texas, did not offer a high-energy youngster like Trey Allen a lot of choices. His life revolved around football, the sport, as well as the fast lifestyle. With no discipline or spiritual influence in the home, Trey soon spiraled out of control and dropped out of high school in his sophomore year. Hitting rock bottom, he cried out to God. A local youth pastor led Trey to Christ and began discipling him. Trey's gift of preaching soon became evident, and he began touring with Christian worship bands and preaching all over the country. When he returned home, Biola University in California invited Trey to come for further biblical training. It was there that he met Aaron, the woman of his dreams. But as Trey soon discovered, Aaron was not only his boss, but also someone not so easily impressed with his sparkling personality and charm. Aaron was a true California girl. Relaxed and friendly, one would never have guessed that her early home life had been marked by loss and uncertainty. At age 6, she lost her father to divorce. In junior high school, her stepfather walked out. And just 2 months after college, her older brother died in a motorcycle accident. Her mother's struggles with breast cancer made home life even more unpredictable. Thanks to the care of a loving pastor, Erin was shepherded from her junior high to her early college years. She grew spiritually strong and transitioned gracefully to Biola University to study psychology and the Bible. While working as a resident assistant in the dorms, she met a spirited young freshman from Texas named Trey Allen. As she would soon find out, Trey was not like any of the others under her care, but rather a force to be reckoned with, in more ways than one. This is Trey and Aaron.
I'm Trey Allen.
I'm Aaron Allen.
And I have, for as long as I can remember, been looking for a wife. As from a little kid, my oldest brother and I were never really into short dating relationships. And I can remember, I have memories as early as 4th grade where like a new girl would come into the school and I'd be like, is that her? Is that the girl I'm gonna marry? I just have always been looking for a wife. I wasn't a Christian until I was 16, and so there was a lot of times where I would just let myself, I had no guard, I had no reserve, and so I would just let myself go too much. And then even after I became a Christian, it was like, oh, now I know the kind of girl I'm supposed to marry, because the Bible explains that. So anyone that I found, I would try and kind of force that to be someone to marry, and so I still just didn't really have control of it. And then I went off to college and made some really solid male friends who had been Christians and had been raised in a Christian house. And that is when I think my time really transformed. I had always had a girlfriend, and then I went to college and I just hung out with a bunch of guys for the first couple of years. And it was really good for me to just kind of leave girls behind and really just kind of say, hey, I'm just gonna grow, I'm gonna have solid male friends. That's kind of the place I was in when I met Aaron. I still had those thoughts and things like that, but I was moving from one dorm to another for summer housing, and I walked in and I was signing up to like doing all the paperwork, and she was like, oh, you're Trey Allen? And I was like, hey, she knows me. That's great, She knows about me and all. Yeah.
I was the summer resident director, so I knew all of the students who were going to be living in the dorms, according to their names.
I mean, she was sitting there and she was beautiful, and that was kind of the first thing I noticed. But I always, and I was not in a place in my life where I was interested in even toying around with anybody who wasn't just a complete solid Christian. That's what I was looking for. I knew I was on track to be pastor and do ministry, and even if not, I knew that I wanted someone who really loved the Lord, and so I thought, man, she's beautiful, maybe this could be it. Still those thoughts going around in my head, but I just kind of let those be because I wanted to see who she was. Luckily for me, she was working there, and so every day from like 1 to 4 or something like that, she was in this office, and the door was always open for students and things like that, and so I would constantly go in there. I would wake up. He
made it his summer routine. He'd go do his stuff in the morning, then from 1 to 4, he'd come in the office and sit with me because I couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I would get up really early and get all my work done, and then I'd go in there because I wanted to, she was forced to be there, so hey, might as well be forced to be around me. So I spent time, and we did that the entire summer. We just hung out and got to where, it was every day we were going out to lunch together. Every day we were hanging out because, I was just there. I was always available. And so me, her, and a friend or a couple people would be going out. And as I got to know her, I just realized that she was solid. She was no joke. She loved the Lord. One thing that instantly attracted me to her was I was a Bible major and into theology, and at Biola everyone has to take Bible classes, but I could tell immediately that she didn't just take Bible classes because you had to. It was something that she loved, and so we would have conversations about theology and about the Bible, and she would be able to keep up and talk, and so that was really attractive. And she was funny. We would just laugh all the time, and so that summer we just really got to know each other well.
Yeah. Which was funny because at that time I was pretty certain that God was calling me to be celibate. Because I had, gone through, I didn't date a lot in high school or college or anything like that. And, and I started wondering, well, if I'm not dating a lot and I'm fine with it, I wonder if, God's just calling me to be celibate, because a lot of women, really focus on, I gotta find the one, and, I just want to be married. And I thought, well, I just want to glorify God, and so what if marriage isn't for me? And if he's giving me the strength to be single today, he'll give me the strength to be single tomorrow, and that will turn into years, and that could turn into a lifetime. And so if someone has to be celibate, I'll take it. It can be me. I thought I was removing that burden from someone else. I'll be the one who's celibate. You can have a husband. And so that was kind of the little kick that I was in at the time, just toying around with the idea of I wonder if this is what God has for me. And so when I met Trey, I certainly wasn't considering dating anyone or anything like that, but I certainly enjoyed his company and really, liked having him around.
And I had no idea about that whole train of thought in her mind, and so the whole summer I was like, man, things are going well. We were hanging out. And she was my RD, so she was technically over me, so I wasn't going to ask her out during the summer.
Because I was the boss.
Yeah, because she.
For the record.
Yeah, and so and that would have been inappropriate. And so toward the end of the summer, I was just like, this is great. This is just fantastic because we've had all this time together, all this build up, and so now I can ask her out. It's just going to be a seamless transition. And so I asked her out, and she said no, just immediately.
I said no. I think initially I was scared away because I hadn't been considering dating him or anything like that, and so I just said no as kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Even though I really liked his company, and I remember because he called me to ask me out, and I said no, and I hung up the phone, and with my then roommate Sarah, I started crying, talking to her about it, because I said he's such a wonderful man and he's gonna make someone so happy, and I hate to hurt him like that. I hate to be the person in his life who's saying no to him because he's so wonderful, this, that, and the other. And so I felt awful about it. I just felt absolutely terrible. But I didn't have those feelings of liking him. I didn't feel like I was there emotionally, even though I really enjoyed his company.
Over that summer, our roommates started dating. A couple of people that lived in our house started dating people that lived in her house.
We had a house of 6. They had a house of 7 or so, and 5 from each house started dating.
Yeah,
and are now married.
Yeah, and so
it was wild.
we were. Even though it's not like she could say no and then I wouldn't be around anymore. We were always around each other, and so much so that we started going out on our roommates are out on a date because our roommates would go out on a date, and I still liked her.
We wouldn't have anything to do.
And so I would I would still be like, hey, let's just go get dinner, and then I'd pay, and then be like, want to go to a movie? And so I'd try and force it into a date. And so she said no to me that first time, and we kept being friends and stuff. And then I would say at least once a month for the next 10 months, I would ask her out again.
We'd have the conversation of,
yeah,
why can't we just date?
It would be perfect.
And in hindsight, we practically were dating, but there were a lot of levels, emotionally that we wouldn't cross, and and things like that, so that it was a friendship, but it probably looked more like dating than.
Definitely did.
But
yeah, so I would always, and she had this thing that she would always say is that we're just incompatible.
Fundamentally incompatible.
Fundamentally
were
incompatible.
my exact words.
Yeah.
We're fundamentally incompatible.
I didn't get it because we were friends. We hung out all the time, and I was like, how are we incompatible? And so I would once a month try and convince her that that's not true, and say, no, we are compatible, and she would say no again.
And at the time, I had all these expectations of, if I were going to marry someone, by that thing, that the celibate thing had, I guess, sort of faded. And so I had these ideas of, if I was going to marry someone, he was going to be this, and that. He was going to be, a older probably, and a businessman, and not a pastor, because I was not going to be pastor's wife. That was just not in the cards for me. And so I was not looking for Trey. And so it took a long time for the Lord to really break down those expectations in my heart and not give me what I thought I wanted, but give me, what I absolutely needed. And to really reveal that to me, that, that Trey was who I was supposed to be with, and not this idea that I had in my head, which would have been terrible for me. I would have hated it.
And it was good for me as well, because I had never really been in that process of being rejected and constantly, like, I just was not going to give up. But, there were times whenever I got tired of it and I would say, I'm done, but nothing, I just knew there was so much about her that I loved. And it wasn't even that I had this overwhelming sense that, because I didn't trust feelings like she's the one, because I'd had those my entire life. But there was, and so I didn't trust those sorts of feelings, but it was just this, when I looked at what the Bible said a solid Christian was, I saw that in Aaron. And so I was not going to let that go, because for me at that time, that was very rare, that you found someone that was that serious, that solid. And so there was just nothing that was going to stop me. And we were such good friends. We got along. She was funny, all those sorts of things. And so I knew that I had to wait it out and wear her down a little bit.
He went home to Texas for a week, and I realized that I really missed him. And I thought initially, no, I just miss him as a friend, because we hang out, and so I just miss, him being around, whatever. And then I started to realize, like, I really miss him. That's weird, since we're just friends. Why do I really miss him so much? And so then it kind of hit me one day, and I remember calling my best friend Allie saying, I really miss him. No, like, I really miss him. So I think I like him, and that's really weird for me. And she kind of talked me through it and definitely got excited for me, because she had been hearing about this guy for 10 months who, was so great, but just not for me, because we were fundamentally incompatible, and all of those stupid words that I said that I eat gladly. So I finally realized that I liked him, and then I had to tell him, which was terrifying, because even though he, for 10 months, had all but professed his love for me, I was still really scared that, I don't know, maybe he changed his mind over the weekend.
It was either that or wait for me to ask again, which would have happened in the next coming weeks at some point.
So I just decided to go ahead and tell him that, hey, turns out I like you too, so that's cool. And we dropped him, with my roommate at the time, Sarah, and her boyfriend, now husband, Kyle, who Kyle is Trey's best friend and was college roommate. We all dropped Trey off at the airport, and on the way home, I had decided I was going to tell Kyle. So I felt like I really needed someone on my team in Trey's home base. So I was so nervous after we dropped Trey off at the airport, and Kyle and Sarah were in the car and we were driving back, and I told Kyle that I liked Trey, and these were the reasons why, and that it wasn't just a flippant decision, and I knew that Trey's feelings for me were so strong, and that I wasn't there yet, but I knew that I would catch up pretty quickly. When we picked him up from the airport, I went in alone and greeted him down the escalator at LAX, and he said, "Why did you come in alone?" And I said, oh, well, because I wanted to tell you something. And he said, okay, what do you want to tell me? And I said, well, I like you. How was your trip? Was your family okay? Was it good to see everyone? And he didn't say anything to me. He said,
just answered her
oh,
questions.
my family was great. Yeah, my family was great. It was so good to see them and this, that, and the other. And he completely ignored what I had just told him. And so I'm sweating and so nervous.
Well, because I had gone 10 months asking her if and then she comes in and tells me and changes the subject. So I was like, you sealed your own fate, So I just kind of answered her questions, and then the funny thing is the second she said that, like we could have literally gone somewhere and gotten married right there, as far as how I was feeling. But obviously I needed to give her a little bit of time. But we talked. She told me, we ended up talking about it that night, and then basically starting dating right then, because it was like I've obviously wanted this. And so we dated, and it was really great because now it was finally everything I had wanted. All our friends were dating, and we were a part of that. It was great.
It was really convenient.
Yeah. We got engaged in September.
We started dating in April
There you
15th,
go.
and we got engaged September 6th.
Yeah.
So it was about 4.5 months of dating, which sounds really short, but because we had had such a long relationship as friends and had spent so much time together, our dating courtship process was very quick because we both knew.
But yeah, like I said, the time she told me she liked me, I was ready.
And by the time I told him I liked
her.
him, I knew what I was getting into. I knew this wasn't just, well, we'll date for fun. It was a very serious, I'm telling this man who is basically in love with me that, I am starting to reciprocate those feelings. And so I knew going into it the gravity of what I was saying, and that basically we'd end up getting married once I told him that I liked him. And so.
And so I think it went really smoothly from there.
Mm-hmm. We got engaged in September in San Diego at Balboa Park. I was told that my roommate Sarah was in a marathon or a race or something like that, and that it started at noon. Turns out runs don't start at noon. I didn't know that. And so she could have told me anything, and apparently they changed the date on me a few times. I didn't know. I didn't pay attention to it. And so I knew that we were going down to the day, for the day to San Diego to see Sarah in this race, and so I was so excited for her. She even bought new running clothes and everything to throw me off the trail, which I had no idea about. And so we go, we're driving down to San Diego. It takes us about an hour to get there, and when we finally arrive, Kyle, who's driving, can't figure out where we're going, and so he says, well, let's stop for directions. And I said, we're, where in the park we're supposed to be. And we pull into this parking lot, which was the same place where we had our first date. Our first official date was the day-long kind of picnic that he had set up, and it was so beautiful, and it was in the park and blankets and all this fancy food and things like that, which was totally not his style, but very much mine. And so he had really, showed a lot of love and consideration and thoughtfulness in that in our first date. And so here we were about 4.5 months later at the same park for Sarah's race, or so I thought. And so we park in this parking lot, and Kyle says, well, Aaron, why don't you get out? And I'm thinking, sure, I'll go find a billboard or something that has, information, a directory about where this race is gonna start. And Kyle says, well, why don't you get out and go to the place where you and Trey had your first date? And I turned to Kyle and I was like, there's no directory there. Why would I go there? That doesn't even make sense. And so it had not occurred to me at all. And Kyle just said, well, just go. Do you remember where it was? Just go. Okay. So I walked down there, and as I'm walking, it started to dawn on me that maybe this wasn't actually about Sarah's race. And so I walked down this little path, and there's Trey, and he has this blanket set up and this picnic, and it was just beautiful. And he's in a button-up and jeans, which he never wears. He's always in a t-shirt. And so I knew this was like a fancy thing because he was in a button-up and, had cleaned up and everything. And so I got down there, and the first thing I said, I think I asked about Sarah's race, and you said, oh yeah, that's just later.
I was, because whenever you get engaged, sometimes you have to bend to the truth a little bit. And at this point, I didn't want to have to explain it all right then, because I had this monologue that I'd been preparing for the last, 14 months, basically. And I just really wanted to, so I just shoved it aside, and I, had this little poem I'd written for her, and
it was amazing.
Talked to, and kind of told her some things, and so then I asked her if she would marry me, and she said yes. And luckily, one of the girls that came down was a photographer that I had planned, one of her roommates, and so she had been taking shots in a
Secret
bush
pictures in the bush
for a while. And so she came down and we took pictures after Aaron said yes, and then we sat down to have a picnic, and we had our picnic, and then I was like, okay, well, let's go driving. And so she's like, okay, and drove to a hotel, like right on the beach there. And she was like, what are we doing at a hotel? You know, like we just got engaged. We haven't gotten married yet. No. You know, and I was like, oh, well, just come with me. And so I took her upstairs to a hotel room, which she was still kind of freaked out about.
Yeah.
But I had bought her a dress and some shoes and kind of a whole outfit.
Not shoes. Jimmy Choos. There's a difference. Yes. They were Jimmy Choos, and I was beside myself because we walked into this hotel room, and at that point I knew that we had dinner plans for the evening, and so he'd gotten this hotel room so that we could clean up because we'd been out at the park outside and it was warm and all of that, so we'd gotten this hotel room so that we could clean up. And I walk in and there's all these beautiful packages on the bed, and I'm giddy at this point. Not only do I have a gorgeous ring on and I, just got engaged, but now there are presents for me, and so I start opening it up, and there are all these beautiful coordinating jewelry, purple earrings, purple bracelet, this gorgeous Charles David purple patent leather clutch, and then purple patent leather Jimmy Choos. And I could have just died at that moment. I was so happy. And it was so lavish and so elaborate, but part of the reason, not just because he loves, shelling out money like crazy, but because the diamond from my ring is actually my grandmother's, and so that was in the family, so he didn't have to, pay for a very expensive ring, so he could use that money towards our engagement. That was really special to me, having my grandma's ring and then having this whole beautiful...
And so we got dressed and got ready and put on our
separately.
Stuff. Yeah, and we went down to the Hotel Del Coronado for a nice dinner, and had a great time there. And then afterwards, the staff there was great because one of the guys was like, oh, anyone who gets engaged and comes here, we like to take a picture of them. So they let us outside right in front of the restaurant, and they had these little fireplaces where I had called in a bunch of her friends, her mom was there, and so there was a bunch of people waiting.
About 30 people or so of our closest friends and family.
And so all of our friends were there, and she was very excited.
And there were some great pictures of that because we walked out, and I have my glass of champagne, and I'm getting ready to, get this photo taken of us just newly engaged in front, and then I see everyone out there on the patio, and it's all of our friends and loved ones, and I was just beside myself again, and it was so special, and everyone had champagne, and so we all toasted and just enjoyed the evening together, and the hotel room that he had already paid for went to a couple friend of ours who was already they were already married, and so he gave that to them as a special thing for the night, in order also to keep our temptation and our purity in check, and that we didn't have a hotel room available to us. But that was really neat to me because not only did we get engaged and I get to enjoy all this stuff, but he was also really generous with other people in the process, and offered this hotel room to another couple friend of ours in order to protect us, but also be a blessing to other people. And so that was really, really neat for me, and just I knew that he's such a good man. We got married in Yorba Linda at a country club, and my fabulous Aunt Janny was our sort of wedding coordinator and did all this amazing stuff with our centerpieces and all the design aspect of the wedding, and so it was absolutely gorgeous. And the ceremony was really fun too.
I'm an emotional guy, especially at weddings. I cry at most weddings. And so I was there, and I was trying so hard not to just bawl. And we did the repeat after me time, the vows, and so I repeated, and then he turned to Aaron and said, okay, now repeat after me, and I kept repeating after him because I was just so nervous. I was so focused on not crying that I just kept repeating, and then he had to turn and say, no, this you already did yours. You can stop. Okay.
He was just so excited. He wanted to say his vows all over again to me. And now, at the very end of January, beginning of February, we moved to Uganda for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. To do ministry, we're going to be working at a church that's right next to a university, and where people from all over Africa come. It's a great university, Makere University, and so we're going to be doing discipleship with a Ugandan native who he pastors a church of 1,000 college students, and he just needs help.
Pastor,
yeah, he's the only trained biblical pastor, and so we're going to go and just help him set up a system of discipleship there, where from hopefully we can get to where from freshman year to senior year, they go from being discipled to doing discipleship among the African peoples. And so, yeah, it's a really great opportunity to not just reach Uganda, but reach a larger portion of Africa because of how many different people come. We've been married for 2.5 years.
May 24th, 2009.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Winning at Love. For more episodes, information, and resources, please visit us at winningatlove.tv. That's winningatlove.tv, not .com. And if you found it helpful, be sure and tell a friend. Thanks for watching, and see you again next time.